You're listening to the Kelly Green Hour for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me solid through and through, and so jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky soul still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast, as we are ready to get you set for Week 3 in the National Football League as the Philadelphia Eagles get set to do battle at home against the Detroit Lions. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and joining me today, as always, is Connor. He is back from vacation. Connor, how you doing today?
I am doing great. I am having a beer and enjoying my last day of vacation because my next and final vacation of the year is moving into a new house. So it's exciting. Happening? That is not next week, but the next week. Oh, I'll still be recording shows, if assuming that I get the internet set up at my place in time. But I mean, it's as exciting as it is. It certainly is not relaxing one bit. Well,
at least you'll get 10 days in between Eagles games before that happens, because we have the Thursday nighter next week, and then they don't play until the following Sunday against the Jets. So you have 10 days of Eagles reprieve.
Exactly. I'll be able to kind of relax and
hopefully
get our shows out of the way, maybe.
Hopefully relax. All right, so before we get started, there was breaking news in the National Football League as Antonio Brown was cut by the New England Patriots today. Obviously, going into that, Brown knew that if anything happened, he was gone. Bill Belichick don't play any of that. Now, obviously, the things that he is being accused of happened before he got to New England, but this is something that's definitely going to be, we have to keep an eye on, because we were talking before we came on. This is not a football thing anymore. There's something wrong with Antonio Brown. Mentally, we don't know if it's, obviously we will never know if it's CTE, because that's something they can't determine until after a player has passed and they, check out the brain and whatnot. But something is really wrong, and I hope that Antonio Brown gets the help he needs.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he doesn't feel bigger than anybody else in this situation, because he definitely needs help. It was simple. All he had to do, they were going to keep him on the team and go through this whole civil thing and go through everything with the league. The Patriots are willing to do that, and then bam, the text that came out today where he's talking to a group of buddies and sends a picture of this woman's kids, and he's saying, investigate this girl. What can you find out about this girl? Trying to dig dirt up on this girl. All he had to do was at this point, it was just accusations. And as soon as those texts broke this morning, that was it. That was the end. And I think we may very well, I know we were talking prior to the show, and I said maybe come like week 8, mid-year type scenario, and someone's in need of a wide receiver, maybe if this is still going on and the league hasn't decided anything, and clearly nothing criminally is coming of this, because they've already said that nothing criminal can come of it. Maybe someone would pick him up, but it all depends on where the league goes with their investigation and the approach that they take, because at this point it's a civil suit, and as we all hate Antonio Brown, it would be a precedent-setting case if they put him on the commissioner's exempt list or suspended him over a civil suit, because as we all know, that has never happened in NFL history. Always criminals that get the suspensions and that stuff. So when everyone was calling for it, I said it won't happen, because this is civil. Everything is accusations. They're all claims. There's a reason that it's not in the hands of the police right now, because there isn't enough evidence. So she's suing and trying to make a story out of it on her side, enough of a story to get money out of it. As horrible as that may sound, that's kind of the situation that they're in.
Yeah, and the big question is, will he get another chance in the NFL? Obviously, that's secondary to everything that's happening. But as teams, you got to kind of think about it. especially if you need help at the wide receiver position. And it's not something that's going to happen in a relatively short time. At least we don't think so. If it does, I mean, it would have to be an organization it'd be an organization like the Raiders. Obviously, he's not going to go back there. So probably like an organization like the Cowboys. Like, I'm not saying that they need a receiver, but a team that just doesn't really care about criminal. I mean, think about the '90 Cowboys. Called them the cocaine Cowboys or something like that. Michael Irvin and all them. Like,
yep.
It's that type of organization that'll pick them up and not care what's going on. But you're right. I mean, it just goes beyond football, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to come of it. But it's hopefully, and I'll continue to stress this. Hopefully, Antonio Brown gets the required help that he needs.
It's sad, though, because I don't think he will, because he feels so above everyone and above everything, it feels like. And now we're at a point now where he needs some real support, some true support, family, friends, whoever leaked these text messages, as terrible as they are, he thought was a friend. So you just never know anymore. And he's got to kind of close his circle and get some real help.
Yeah, and he needs to get away from having the yes men around him, because that's what hurts a lot of athletes. They have a bunch of yes men, and regardless of what you do, even if it's wrong, they'll be like, yeah, do it. There's nothing wrong. Nothing bad can come of it. So like he's somebody else, and it's not just him. It's a bunch of other athletes that get into this situation because they're around the wrong crowd.
No, exactly. It's not the first time we've seen this in any league. It happens all the time where you think you have friends, but you really just have money. It's not about the friends. It's the money and people who stuck around because they kind of enjoy the experience of being with someone who's rich and can do all this stuff. And that just feels like one of those people. I'm definitely saying that the friend did the right thing. I'm saying, yes, the friend did the right thing, but Brown has to look at his inner circle and shrink it up and get that help he deserves.
I definitely agree. All right, so let's take a step past this. That's series stuff. That obviously neither of us have a law degree or anything that we can really dive into it to understand everything that's going on. But again, the Eagles are hosting the Detroit Lions this week. We all remember the last time Detroit came to Philly. It was one of the greatest games to watch on TV, and not just because of the way the game unfolded, but the way it looked in terms of the atmosphere when nobody, not even the weather people, thought it was going to snow. And by game time, there was 10 inches of snow on the field. It was awesome. I don't know if you remember that game, Connor, but I remember it like almost like it was yesterday, because me and Shane watched it together, and I had to work that night. But 10 inches of snow, and Shady McCoy went off for over 200 yards rushing. He's somebody that doesn't matter what type of weather it is. You can't keep the guy from cutting, can't keep him from doing his thing. And he had a field day in Chip Kelly's offense that day. Six years ago.
I remember it for that sole purpose, the snow and Shady. That's about it. There wasn't a whole lot else to really remember.
Deshaun had a touchdown. I even posted some highlights from it yesterday on Facebook, because I was looking back and I was like, man, this game was so awesome just to watch. It was a game I wish I would have been able to be at. Just all the snow, the field. You go from the beginning of the game, or like beginning of the early morning that day, and it was perfect sunny day. And then out of nowhere, just this blizzard comes in, and it affected the Eagles early on. They got off to a really slow start. I think Jeremy Ross had a big day returning kicks and punts for Detroit, but the Eagles were able to come away and scoring 28 fourth quarter points in that game.
Yeah, well, definitely a game to remember in Eagles history, especially a young history if you haven't followed the Eagles for long, or you're kind of young. I mean, I'm 26, so I mean, that would have made me 20 years old. I've been watching since I was 15, but it's definitely one I remember very well.
All right, so let's go back to week 1 for the Detroit Lions. They tied the Arizona Cardinals 27-27. The thing I remember about that game is Detroit dominated the first 2.5 quarters of that game.
Yeah, they blew a 20. It was 17-0 at one point, and it was even at the worst. They blew a 24-6 lead in the second half.
Yeah, and they just dominated Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury in their NFL debuts. But This is where I think Kyler Murray is going to be really good in the NFL. And he finally got his footing under him, and he lit it up in the second, third, and fourth quarter, and was able to lead Arizona back to tie the game. But the one thing I noticed about Detroit, they still have weapons on offense. Matt Stafford is a gunslinger.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter that Matt Patricia is a defensive-minded coach. It doesn't matter that Jim Bob Cooter's not there anymore. They have weapons on the outside, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. They have a new tight end in TJ Hawkinson. They have Kerryon Johnson in the backfield. The only thing that they need to shore up, which they've been building over the last couple drafts, is their offensive line. And that's where the Eagles have to dominate, find a way to dominate. But you can see the weapons that this Detroit offense has, and they have the ability to move the ball on you. And we've seen what the Eagles defense has done the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's something that I believe Detroit's going to want to try to take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that the Lions are in such a hard-pressed NFC division. They're stuck with the likes of the Bears and the Vikings and the Packers, and that is not a good division to be stuck in, because if they fix the offensive line just a little more, another player or two, I think they could easily make a run in almost any other division but the one that they're stuck in. I know a lot of people are like, are the Lions good? Are they better than people thought they'd be? My personal belief is no. I think these first two games are not a true depiction of what the Lions will be, because you play an injury-plagued and struggling Chargers team who just feels like the football gods hate them. Every single twist and turn always goes the opposite direction of the Chargers, and they've struggled, and that game was definitely the Chargers had two massive TDs called back, holding and a block in the back, plus two missed field goals. Rivers extremely excruciating to watch interception in the final minute of the fourth quarter. It was just in the end zone. It was just not their game there for Rivers and the Chargers. It just wasn't. Overall, that game was insanely ugly from a defensive, offensive, and a special teams perspective. So there's not a whole lot to say as far as that game went. But yeah, like you said, the Cardinals game, it's the Cardinals, first of all. So I want to make sure we're abundantly clear. This team is better, but not leaps and bounds better. They're not a team who's going to go out there and win their division or be 500 or anything of the such. I think I actually had them going like 5-11 or something. I do agree with you. Stafford has impressed a lot. It finally looks like the quarterback that they paid, because he has struggled in prior years. Golladay has looked really good. Amendola looks like a completely refreshed player. I haven't overall been thrilled with Marvin Jones, but I can see you have Golladay, you have Amendola. Whenever there's the opportunity to throw to Marvin Jones, it's there, and he's a reliable third option. And then you have Kerryon Johnson, obviously, who's in the backfield doing okay. But obviously, like you said, behind that offensive line, it's not pretty. It's tough for Stafford. I noticed in highlights of in those two games, Stafford's getting that ball out quick because he does not have a lot of time. That offensive line looks bad. And one of the things I pointed out from the Cardinals game that I was really impressed by the Cardinals was their blitz and their defensive line pressure. And I think it's going to be huge that the Eagles look back at that Cardinals game, that Jim Schwartz specifically looks back at that Cardinals game and watches the blitzes, watches the defensive line pressure that they were getting, because this game will be huge for Brandon Graham and for Derek Barnett. We talk about Derek Barnett and how, he's got the second most QB hits in the league. This is a game where you have to turn those QB hits into sacks. Enough QB hits, you have to turn it into sacks.
You're right. The Eagles only have 2 sacks on the year, one by Andrew Sendejo, one by Tim Jernigan. So they have to. And we talked about the first 2 weeks, how Washington's offensive line was porous and how Atlanta's offensive line was porous, and yet the Eagles still weren't able to get pressure unless they brought multiple blitzes. So they're gonna have to find a way, because Stafford, as you mentioned, he's not shy of just getting rid of the football, letting his skill position players make a move and go, try to make a man miss and go. And that's where the Eagles, we know the Eagles struggle in open space in an open field when it comes to trying to tackle. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball for Detroit. They're led by Darius Slay. He's really good. He had an interception against the Chargers last week. He's their big play guy. If I remember correctly, the game, I think it was Doug Peterson's first season as a coach. They were playing in Detroit, and Slay picked off Carson Wentz as they were in the fourth quarter, as they were going down to try to either take the lead, tie the game, or whatever it was. So Darius Slay, and depending on the receiver situation for the Eagles, which we'll get into a little bit, I don't know who, like Darius Slay can shut down half the field, because I don't know about you, but I'm very wary about the Eagles, backup receivers right now, because they did nothing last week, minus minus Nelson to give me any type of hope that they're going to be able to make some plays this week against Detroit.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I expected a lot more out of J-Job, but he definitely, I mean, like Peterson said, he was kind of just thrown into it. No one was expecting the situation to come up. What started as pre-game issues turned into about a quarter of our team being on an injury report come Monday morning. So, I mean, it was crazy. Like the situation we're now in. Nelson Aguilar had that massive drop. He actually had a couple drops. I mean, they're not helping at all. I mean, Aguilar has a 12% drop rate, and the team in general has a 7% drop rate, which is not good. That's not helping Carson Wentz out at all. And a lot of those drops come from the people who we are relying on this week. So it's really, I'm very uncertain about it too, because it looks like we're going into, like, for me, if Alshon's not feeling it, don't put him out there.
Especially with the game 4 days later.
Yeah, there's lots of football still to play. And the fact that they're sitting there and he didn't practice, but they're saying they're optimistic, sit him. If he can't make that practice, that final practice before the game on Sunday, don't play him. It's not worth it. It's coming up so quickly. And like you said, that game right after this game, give him the rest. If he has to miss these next two and get that extra additional rest even, do it, in my eyes. Because we can have faith in Nelson Aguilar. That drop might have just been, that 1 in 100 that he drops or miscues on now. But otherwise, like, J-Job really has to step up. Goddard, if he's playing, is going to have to step up huge. And Ertz is definitely going to have to reclaim his position as the ball hog. I'll call it the ball hog because of the amount he was targeted last year. So he has to reclaim that position. He has to get open, and he has to realize where the sticks are if the situation comes up again.
I give Ertz a lot of credit, especially he played every snap last week. That's very rare for a skill position player on offense to play every snap on all. It was crazy. And like there was Derek Gunn was on, I think, 97.5 The Fanatic this week. And he was like, yeah, I was talking to Ertz and I asked him how he felt. And he was like, Ertz was just like, I'm exhausted, man. And you can't blame him when you're out there. You thought you would have a second tight end. You thought you would have somebody to be able to come on the field for you. And when you only have two tight ends on the roster, there's not much you can do. That's why the Eagles brought up Alex Ellis just in case. Even if Goddard is, available, we don't know what he's going to be able to provide. Let's move up to the defensive line for the Detroit Lions. They gave Trey Flowers big money this offseason. Now, the Chargers ran the ball against them fairly successfully, but this front line for Detroit is a line that can gobble up running games. Snacks Harrison is really good. Trey Flowers, not one that's going to rush the passer, but really good at stopping the run. A'Shawn Robinson's pretty good. Like, they have a front four that that won't allow you to easily open up holes. And we know that the Eagles struggle on the ground. We've seen it the last couple of weeks. This is going to be, I think, I know we're going to get into it in a little bit, but this is going to be one of the keys to the game. The Eagles offensive line has to find a way to dominate this Detroit defensive line.
I agree. I actually feel like they've underwhelmed the Detroit Lions front four. I mean, their lines currently rank as a 21st run defense. So, I mean, they're not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. And, I mean, I can't imagine covering David Johnson and then Eckler and Jackson the next week, who bring two completely different components to the game, would be very easy on a run defense. But I feel like they've kind of underwhelmed. And when watching some highlights of their Lions defense, the Lions defense just overall has not looked great, and it shows in their stats. I think they rank like the 25th defense in the league. So it kind of shows, and that's in a game against the Cardinals and a game against the Chargers where the Chargers only scored 10 points. So the fact that you're at that point where you tied a game and you gave up 10 in the next and you still rank so poorly in defense speaks volumes to how the defense actually is doing. I mean, Darius Slay, yeah, he's amazing. He's great, but there's not a whole lot out there beyond him. So he's kind of doing it out there by himself. And then the front four, the front four kind of remind me of our front four right now. Facing some teams that they should be able to get a lot more pressure on, but they just can't, for some reason, apply the pressure that they need to apply.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be intriguing to watch these two teams, the Eagles and the Lions, go up against each other, because you're right. The defenses are kind of similar. The one thing about Detroit, Matt Patricia also kind of has a chip on his shoulder after what the Eagles did to his Patriots team in Super Bowl 52 on February 4th, 2018. I'll always remember that date. It's not, obviously the Lions team is not that Patriots team, but he could not stop Doug Peterson's offense, like, at all. Doug Peterson's offense moved up and down the field on the Patriots that day, and Patricia was leading that group, calling the defensive plays. So he's going to want to come in here and try to out-coach Doug Peterson. Peterson is the better coach of the two, but it's going to come down to game plan for both teams. And the Eagles' game plan, at least in the first half, the last year, has not been good since 2017. They just have not been able to put together first quarters. They're the lowest scoring first quarter team in the NFL over the last, year, plus the 2 games this year. So they have to find a way to get off to a fast start.
I agree. That was definitely one of the things that I put down as a key to the game, was strike early and don't let off the gas, because Stafford currently, this isn't always the world's most beautiful and sexy stat, but he has 2 fourth quarter comebacks in 2 games this year. So this team, like we discussed with Stafford and like we discussed with his weapons, he will let his weapons do their thing and they can make things happen. So we have to strike early and we cannot let up. Because like you said, like the Falcons game, we started slow and then we struggled through a lot of it. And we cannot do that again, especially against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and, Detroit's defense held down Phillip Rivers, and that's a pretty explosive Chargers offense. When you think about the weapons that they have with Phillip Rivers, Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson, Keenan Allen, they're no joke on offensively, and they held them to 10 points last week in their victory in Detroit. Obviously, and one thing that could be going in Eagles' favor, Detroit's a different beast at home than they are on the road. They're not that good of a road team, but the Eagles, when they play at home, they're a lot better at home, like most teams are. They definitely play a lot better at home, especially under Doug Peterson. It's very rare that the Eagles are losing home games. The crowd, the Eagles crowd, the 70,000 plus fans that pack the link, they bring the heat every play of every game that's at the link. That's why it's always important. That's why it was important for the Eagles to get home field advantage back in 2017. Nobody wanted to come to Philly to play. And that was one thing everybody was talking about coming into this year. If you can get home field advantage, you don't have to go to New Orleans. You don't have to go to that dome. You don't have to go to the LA Coliseum. You don't have to go to Seattle. You don't have to go to Dallas. Like, that is key. Like, if you have to have all these teams come to Philly, nobody wants to come to Philly and play in front of this rabid fan base. And the Eagles are behind the ball right now because they lost the game last week to an inferior opponent. And if say they lose to Detroit, you're 1-2 going to Green Bay 4 days later, and another big game. There's a chance that the Eagles could start the season 1-3 while Dallas is 4-0, because Dallas gets the D3 team, the Miami Dolphins, this week, and then a Drew Brees-less New Orleans Saints the next week, and you're already 2 games back, 3 games back in the division before you even see Dallas, and you don't see Dallas to the second half of the year. So this is like, if there has ever been an important first, game 3, week 3 game ever, this is it for the Eagles.
Yeah, it is. It's a massive game for them, because I was really high on Green Bay, and when we did our predictions, like I said, I tossed up between Green Bay and Philly in that divisional round to get to New Orleans. So, I mean, I'm really high on them. They look better and better with every quarter that they play. That defense is for real. That offense is really solid, led by Aaron Rodgers. It's scary to think about going there, especially on the only thing that benefits it is it's a Thursday night, and you just don't know what to expect on a Thursday night from any team, from anyone. I mean, we watched Christian McCaffrey get shut down on a Thursday night after putting up Well, let fantasy talk for a minute. He put up over 40 fantasy points, and then he put up less than 10 the next week on a Thursday night. So you just don't know what you're getting from a team and from a player on a Thursday night, and that's why everybody hates Thursday nights, obviously. But you're not wrong. This is a huge game, and I think at the end of the season, if we get stuck in that wild card weekend or we miss, we're going to look back on this game and the Falcons game, and we're going to say, what happened in those two games?
Yeah. So obviously we're definitely going to early next week. It's going to be a busy week for us because following the Detroit game, we'll have our review show, and then we'll have to jump right into a preview show of the Green Bay. So definitely it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles come out for this Detroit game. Let's move to the keys to the game. We've already mentioned one. You mentioned one. Start quick, start early. One key for me is the Eagles' offensive line has to dominate. I know I mentioned that. Isaac Seumalo, according to PFF, and I know you like PFF, rated out as the worst offensive lineman they have ever graded since they started doing it.
Well, rightfully so.
And of the 100 and I think 90 offensive linemen, whatever the number is, I think it's 190, maybe give or take a couple, that got graded out this past weekend. He was the worst. He gave up 8 quarterback hits, if I'm not mistaken. He was dreadful. He was putrid. The Eagles, if he does not perform, need to get him out the game early. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you put Dillard in there. I don't even care if you give Big V a chance. Call up Stefan Wisniewski. I don't care what you do. Isaac Seumalo got manhandled by Grady Jarrett. Now, Grady Jarrett is really good. So, you kind of give Seumalo a little bit of slack there, but no. He needs to put his big boy pants on. He needs to ball out, and he did not play well at all. And the offensive line as a whole did not play well. And Carson Wentz, for not having Alshon, not having Deshaun, not having Goddard, for as bad as he played in the first half when his QB rating was a 6.1, he gave the Eagles a chance to win. The defense helped, but he was also took the team down the field. He threw a perfect pass to Nelson Aguilar, who dropped what would have been a go-ahead touchdown. He threw a ball to Zach Ertz on 4th down. If Ertz would have ran a half a yard further, that's a first down. Who knows if the Eagles score after that? But still, a lot of people try to put all the blame on Carson Wentz, and rightfully so. He's the quarterback. The quarterback gets the win-loss record. If a team loses, he gets all the praise. Or if a team wins, he gets all the praise. If a team loses, everybody comes down on him. But the offensive line and his skill position players have to help him.
Absolutely, that is a huge one, especially that offensive line. Everybody bragged for us about how good this offensive line was going to be, and to sit there and see one guy grade out as the worst, which probably brings the grade of the whole line down immensely. If you're the worst of like 190 offensive linemen, then that's ugly. That just doesn't look good. And like you said, it is against Grady Jarrett, but like we just discussed, these defensive lines are similar, the Eagles and the Lions. They just need that 1 week to really break out and to come out, and it could be a humongous game for either of those defensive lines. So I would not be one bit surprised if you see a guy like Seumalo who had a really bad game, and you attack that guy like they did Ronald Darby. You attack and you attack and you attack that same person, and you put the right person on it that makes that matchup difficult constantly. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions do that if Seumalo's out there and he's showing signs of weakness right off the bat again. Just attack him. And I mean, and like you said, to the skill players, if Stafford can put his faith in his skill players, then there is no reason, injuries or not, that Carson Wentz cannot put faith in his position players or his skill players, especially a guy like Zach Ertz, especially Nelson Aguilar, who had a really good 2018, and especially a guy like J-Jaw, who they drafted where they drafted him. You should be able to have faith in those guys performing in these types of situations where if there's an injury and you're given the chance, you're given 90% of snaps like J-Jaw was, you take those, you run with those, you make the most of the situation. Although he wasn't targeted that much, it's important that you make the most of it and you help your quarterback out. And there was, like that you said, that play with Ertz, the drop with Aguilar, that were humongous misses by the positional players.
Definitely were, and they need to find a way to help out. I'll continue to stress it. If Carson's putting the ball right on you, catch it. And what did you think of the play that Carson made last week when I have no idea how his knee never hit the ground and he got the ball to Mac Hollins? That's a play. That's a franchise quarterback type of play. There's maybe a handful of quarterbacks in the NFL that can make that play, if that. And a lot, and people still coming out and are like, Carson didn't lead the team to a win. He needs help. Even Tom Brady needs help in order for his team to win all those Super Bowls. It wasn't just Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that play was so basically the way I was on that play was if they had called him down, it would have been down. It was one of those plays that you couldn't challenge it because there was nothing to overturn it. If they called him down, he was down. If they called it complete, which they did, it's complete. But it was that close. They showed the replay. They zoomed in. It was fuzzy. You could tell his knee was just barely off. But whatever side they had called it, it would have stayed that way. But that is a franchise quarterback play. That is why we paid Carson Wentz. And those are the situations where you pray to God your position player makes that play. And he made that grab. I think it was Aguilar who made that grab on that play.
It was Mac Hollins, actually.
Mac Hollins. Okay. So it's important that you guys make that play. If he goes out there and he does that for you, you have to make that play for him. And when he makes plays like that happen, you sit there and you're like, now we know why we paid him. Yes, did he not get the win? It was a pretty ugly game on both sides. I wasn't there for the review show, but it was an ugly game on both sides for both teams. And both teams should have performed a lot better and could have performed a lot better. And at the end of the season, if we miss the playoffs or we're stuck in that wild card round, like I said, and lose that home field advantage, that this is one of those games where I think we're going to come back to.
Yeah, you're right about that. Do you have any other keys to the game?
Well, you say the offensive line, so I'm going to say the defensive line and the pressure on Stafford. Stafford's only been sacked 3 times, which is 8th in the league. And like I said a little bit earlier, we like to brag that Barnett's second in QB hits. He has got to come out and be 2017 Derek Barnett, rookie Derek Barnett. He needs to turn those QB hits into sacks, and it has to happen this week. The fact that we have preached that this guy's going to have a big season, he's going to come out and he's going to win. He's going to, well, not win games for us, but he's going to be a difference maker in games for us. And all we can do is sit there and say, well, he's got second in QB hits. No. We need those sacks, and it starts this week against this offensive line. That's 2 straight, not very good offensive lines that have kind of handled our defensive line fairly well. And now it's time for Barnett and Graham to really turn it up, get those strip sacks, get those sacks, turn those QB hits into more. And obviously Stafford, his team ranks 5th in yards per game at 315. This also probably speaks to the secondary, and the secondary is definitely one that I think is a real key to the game, but there's only so much we can talk about that secondary. So it's important that we make Stafford uncomfortable and we allow our secondary time, an easier time and more time to prepare to make the play or to see the play out, and not allow Stafford to get that ball out quick. We have to get to him just as quick as he's getting the ball out. They're the 8th ranked offense, averaging over 400 yards a game. The only good thing we have going for us on that defensive line is we own the 3rd best run defense in the league.
That's because nobody runs against us.
Yeah, nobody runs, but if there's a team who might take the chance, Kerryon Johnson is someone who could get things going if he sees holes, if he can start making things happen. So we really, really have to, that defensive line, I think, is a real big key to the game, just as much as you say the offensive line, I say the defensive line. I think the 2 lines for both teams are extremely vital.
I definitely agree with you there. It also comes down to kind of expand on your point. Fletcher Cox needs to show up. Now, I know he anticipated playing against Malik Jackson or Tim Jernigan, and of course they're both hurt, with Jackson being out for the year, Jernigan being out, who knows, 6 to 8 weeks possibly. It's going to Hassan Ridgeway and Akeem Spence are going to have to step up. Cox has to show that he's the dominant player that everybody anticipates him being. He needs to eat up double teams. He needs to get into the backfield. He needs to make plays.
Yeah, at this point, teams barely have to double team him, and he has to draw the attention because that's what's going to help Barnett and Graham get to Stafford and apply that pressure we need.
Agree.
We don't need him to get to the quarterback. We need the ends to get there.
I agree with you on that. Now, my other key is the running game needs to get going. Miles Sanders needs to stop dancing. He's not Shady McCoy. You make one cut and go. Stop dancing. Stop trying to bounce everything to the outside. Find your hole and go get 5-6 yards at a time. And for heaven's sakes, feed Jordan Howard the ball. I know I was saying in the offseason that this was going to be Miles Sanders' team, but it's apparent that he's not ready yet. Jordan Howard, he still has it. He's still averaging 6-7 yards a carry. Get him the ball. Let him eat. Let him go. And then you can go off play action. The middle of the field could be open for, Zach Ertz. We're not going to have that speed element on the outside because Deshaun's going to be out this week. But they have to find a way to open up other parts of the field, and it can start with the running game. So please, 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 Doug, run the football. And if you win the coin toss, receive. Put the offense out there. Let Carson go out there, put some points on the board, get a lead early, and get the crowd into it. And that could, because if the Eagles start off slow and they start booing, Detroit can feed off of that.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with if usually you pick to kick away, pick to receive. Change it up. Change the whole game plan up. Change the pace of the game and start off fast. Start early and keep it going often. I actually had Howard versus Sanders and the run Peterson. Please run the damn ball. And I had Howard versus Sanders as a huge key to the game as well because Howard leads every rushing statistical category on this team with 7 less rushes. We love Sanders. We know Sanders is our running back of the future. We get that Howard is probably more than likely a rental that we're only going to get to see. It's that shiny toy that we get to see this year only, and then we pass him off to somebody else. So we love Sanders, but it's just not his time yet.
And if that's the case, use them. Abuse them.
Exactly.
Just like Dallas did with DeMarco Murray. Use and abuse Jordan Howard. Get what you can get out of him, and then let him walk.
Exactly. Like I said, Howard needs to see more touches. Howard needs to touch that damn ball. Get it to 50-50, 60-40. I even would say get that a 60% grab for Howard, 40% for Sanders and Sproles. Sanders and Sproles, we love Sproles. We love Sanders. Sanders is our future. Sproles is our past. They can split 40% of the carries. 60% of the carries to Jordan Howard would be huge. Like I mentioned earlier, that is a 21st ranked run defense. This is a worse run defense than the Atlanta Falcons, who we watched the week prior get eaten alive by the Vikings run. So this is a worse run defense than that. So it is huge. It is crucial that Peterson runs the ball and that it is Howard who is carrying the ball at least 60% of this game.
I agree. Hopefully Dougie P's listening, as we know he listens to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast. Before we move forward, just want to remind everybody, wherever you're listening to us, to rate and review our show. You can hit us up on Twitter. The Always Next Year podcast Twitter is at ANY Podcast. You can send a direct message to that if you have any comments or if you have any constructive criticism for us as ways we can improve the show. If you want to reach Connor, you can reach Connor at Connor10. That's Connor TEN. And I'm at LJ Harrell 54. That's HARRELL LJ Harrell 54. Now, before we get to the pick segment, Connor, your one overreaction from week 2 in the National Football League.
Oh, I am so pumped for this. The 49ers are good, ? Everybody is losing their mind over the 49ers, and a lot of people are saying, oh, they're here. And they beat the Bengals and the Bucks. And now they get a big Benless Steelers. Really? So my big overreaction is that people actually think the 49ers are good and that they're actually going to contend for a playoff spot or any of the such. Their second half, starting from week 8, their schedule looks like this. Seahawks ×2, Packers, Ravens, Saints, Falcons, Rams. So I think you want to see who the real 49ers are. Their second half schedule is really going to tell you who the real 49ers are. And listen, I'm not a 49ers hater. I like the 49ers. I wouldn't mind seeing them succeed and seeing Jimmy Garoppolo succeed, not under Bill Belichick. But I just don't think you can sit there and say they're good and they're 2-0 and they deserve to be. Oh, I think they're 6.5-point favorites against the Steelers, even without Big Ben. You got those skill players, you got those position players. So my overreaction is, are the 49ers actually good?
My overreaction? I still think Dallas is overrated. They played the Giants week 1, Washington week 2, get Miami this week, and get a Drew Breesless Saints next week. They could very well be 4-0. But their second half schedule isn't easy. They get the Vikings. They get the Eagles twice. They get the Patriots. It would not shock me, even if, say, the Eagles were to drop to 1-3. It would not shock me if the Eagles still win the division. Now, this could be my bias against Dallas coming out. But I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are all that. Yeah, they have a good offense. Yeah, sure. After New Orleans, they get to see Green Bay. And we know how Aaron Rodgers likes to play in Dallas. After that Green Bay game, Dallas gets the Jets. That's a win. So, and then October 20th, week 7. That's what I'm talking. Week 7, Eagles in Dallas, Sunday Night Football. We're about to find out how that team really is. Look, they have weapons. We know that it's Zeke. It's Zeke's offense, and I hope they give Dak Prescott $40 million a year. I hope they do, because they ain't gonna be able to afford everybody else. So, my overreaction is the Eagles are still winning this division, even if they drop to 1-3, because Dallas hasn't beaten anybody, and I don't think they're going to beat any good teams. I also have another one. It's Jalen Ramsey's going to be an Eagle, by the way, come next week. I think the Eagles trade for him.
Wow. All right. Well, I you know what? I wanted them to do Minkah Fitzpatrick, and you know what? I mean, it's a toss-up. I mean, if we get Ramsey, obviously I'm going to be pumped. I'm an Eagles fan. What do I prefer? Fitzpatrick, I mean, you have more control of him for a longer period at a cheaper price, whereas Ramsey, you do the deal and you got to pay that man because you want to ensure that you're keeping that man with you for X amount of years or whatever. And I think his asking price is 15 to 20 million. So I'm just like, I kind of had cap in mind largely. But would I want Jalen Ramsey? Oh, I'd probably be screaming like a little girl and waking my girlfriend up. Definitely if that happened. But I mean.
But my thing is, if you have to trade, so I'm assuming it's going to be like a first, a third or fourth. And if you have to throw a player in, I'm throwing Sidney Jones in. And everybody knows how much I love Sidney Jones. But if you think about it, the first round pick and the third or fourth round pick, you give up. Are those players going to be any good as Jalen Ramsey, who is the best cornerback in the league right now?
Well, I think so Ian Rappaport said it. Would you trade your last 2 years first round picks for Jalen Ramsey? Is the exercise he told his listeners to do.
Dillard
and no,
we traded that pick.
We traded the pick. So we can't say, so let's do Dillard and Barnett. Those are the two most recent first round picks we can truly depict.
Yeah, I would trade Barnett. I don't know
Would you trade Dillard and Barnett? See, that's why you have to think about it. People are like, oh, hell yeah, he's worth 2 first rounders. What are those first rounders? But if you look back in time at the 2 first rounders, are those 2 first rounders, are you going to get a Dillard this year? Who knows? You don't know. But you have the best practice you can do is look at it like that. But Peter King put on his Monday morning quarterback or whatever thing, a first, a third, and Sidney Jones. If we do not have to give up 2 firsts, I think I would pull the trigger on almost any deal. If we have to give up 2 firsts, I do not think I would pull the trigger.
My thing is, if say the Eagles and the Jaguars kind of have something on, you can't play Sidney Jones on Sunday, because if anything happens to him, which we've seen him when he's on the field, he likes to limp around a lot. Like, if anything happens to Sidney Jones, the deal is off. Or you have to throw in that second first round pick. So it's just very intriguing and as how things are going to turn out and how that's all going to play out. I'm intrigued by it. After that game that he played last night, he
He's a beast. He's a beast.
He's the number one. He shuts down half the field.
Oh, exactly. Nobody turns his direction. Do you know how huge that would be for our defense to know we have that defensive line
and
then half a field shut down? You think about Jenkins, like you have Jenkins on one side, so you'd put Jenkins on the other side and Ramsey on one side. Who wants to throw in either of those sides of the field?
I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking of the receivers we face. Amari Cooper twice. I guess he would cover DK Metcalf on Seattle maybe. Josh Gordon on New England. I was going to say Antonio Brown, but he's no longer with the Patriots. Like, you think about these teams and some of the receivers that we are going to be facing. Robbie Anderson and the Jets. I know he's not great, but like he's got some speed. He can still get down the field. Who's the number? Devontae Adams. I know if we were to get him, we probably wouldn't be able to play next Thursday. But like you get Devontae, like these are some really good receivers that the Eagles are going to have to be facing. And then when you get into the playoffs and you go up against the Rams or you go up against the Saints or you go up against any of these other teams, and we got Minnesota, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Like, give me a corner that you throw him on the number one receiver of the other team and you don't have to worry about it. You know what he did against DeAndre Hopkins? He held him to 5 catches. DeAndre Hopkins might be the best receiver in the game. He held him to 5 catches. Like, come on, make the move, so, Howie.
I completely agree because, like, look at what they did. They found, no matter what, yes, they picked on Darby. Is Darby good? Yeah, Darby's pretty good. But each week, a team will pick someone, and they will do that to our secondary because we are bound every week, week in and week out. One of our 3 secondary players, cornerbacks, is going to have a bad day. And last week, it was Darby. And Darby got eaten alive. And it didn't matter who. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Hardy. I don't even know his first name. That's how little I know the guy.
There was a point in the game that Darby had given up 8 catches on 12 targets for like 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not good.
And then we talk about week 1. You threw it in my face about Rasul Douglas, and he got burnt on a couple plays too. You know what? This is it. We don't have consistency in our secondary. We need what is separating us from being a Super Bowl contender and a perennial playoff contender is that secondary.
Yep, 100% agree. So hopefully Howie's also listening, and we see something happen sooner rather than later, because we know the trade deadline is not till I think week 9, week 8, week 9.
We need it far before week 9.
We
definitely need it now. We needed it yesterday.
He missed the boat on Jadeveon Clowney. You can't miss the boat on Jalen Ramsey.
You know what? My suspicion is there was one team that called the league and said, will he be able to play Sunday?
Eagles?
I think that was Howie.
I bet you if they would have said, yeah, that's fine, the move would have been made by now. Like, all you have to do is tell Jalen, go cover who we facing this week, Detroit. Go cover Kenny Golladay. Don't worry about the rest of the defense. Wherever Golladay goes, you're on him. That's all you got to tell him. That's all you got to tell him.
Yep.
All right. Let's move to our vaunted picks segment. After last week, you, my friend, have taken the lead as you got more picks right than I did. Let me pull them up real quick. I'm sorry. I should have had this ready.
Preparation. Come on.
I can't even find it. Whatever. But we both lost on the Eagles pick. I lost. I won the lock in the Patriots over the Dolphins, and I lost in New Orleans beating the Rams because Drew Brees wanted to.
Yeah, that wasn't.
So
in all honesty, I don't know if that game was gonna go their way, anyways. The refs. Damn.
Another missed call. That's ridiculous. And you got your lock and your upset correct last week. All right. So again, we do an Eagles pick, and you have to do at least one upset. You can do 2 upsets if you want, or you can do 1 upset and 1 lock. Would you like to go first, Connor?
I'll start it out. So going in part to my overreaction, the 49ers are 6.5, so a full touchdown favorite over the Steelers. I have the Steelers covering that spread over the 49ers this week and keeping it within at least a touchdown, if not winning it.
As your upset?
That's my upset.
Well, that's funny because my upset, which I have it at +7, I also took the Steelers over San Francisco. So we're both on the same wavelength there. Your next pick.
Oh, I know you're going to love this one. My lock, Bills over Bengals at 6 points. They are winning that. You can laugh at me. You're gonna laugh until the Bills are a playoff lock, and then you're gonna say, Connor, I'm sorry, you were right.
Oh man.
The Bills over the Bengals, 6 points.
That's in Buffalo, right? If it was in Cincinnati, I'd give Cincinnati a chance. But I don't know. When is AJ Green coming back? They need AJ Green back.
Well, I don't know. So basically, somebody reported that he looked like he wasn't limping. He was participating in practice, shed his boot, and he might be back in the next couple weeks. And he shut that down and said, "Nah, I'm still at least like 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks."
That's a shame. All right, my next pick is another upset. I'm taking the Houston Texans. I can't believe I'm going with a Bill O'Brien +3 over the Los Angeles Chargers.
I thought about that. I almost did that one too. That was almost my upset.
Both teams have pretty bad offensive lines, but I mean, I like Deshaun Watson a lot, and as much as I'm a Chargers fan, and I think that they have a shot to win their division, I think Houston's going to come away with the victory this week. The only thing my issue with it is them traveling and Bill O'Brien, because I'm not a Bill O'Brien fan, but I'm going to take the Houston Texans over the Los Angeles Chargers in the upset. I need to find a way to make a comeback, so I'm going with 2 upsets this week.
And then, so in the Eagles game, I've been thinking about, I almost lost sleep over this last night because I am almost at a point. So the spread is 6. I don't know if you got that too. I use ESPN. I looked today.
Well, for the Eagles games, we're
going straight up?
We're going straight up for Eagles game.
I was losing sleep over that spread because I didn't know if we'd be able to actually get a touchdown over them. Eagles over Lions. Then if this is straight up, it's Eagles over Lions.
What's the score that you have?
Oh man, I'm thinking 24. Oh man, I didn't even put a score down. I'm thinking 24-17.
24-17 Eagles. I took the Eagles to beat the Lions too, and I'm actually going 27-17. It'll probably be like a late field goal or something that gets it to 10, but like pretty much on the same track with this game. They have to start fast. I mentioned it before. If you win the toss, receive the kick, and hopefully, I know Corey Clement's probably not playing. Yeah, maybe he is actually. He's out of the
he was ruled out.
Is he ruled out? Well, that was another key to last week's game. Me and Shane actually talked about in our non-victory hour. That fumble out at halftime really screwed the pooch for the Eagles. That's a big turnaround. The Falcons get the ball inside the 25 and they score a touchdown. How many points did they win? By 4. Like the Eagles don't fumble there. They go down the field. They get points. That's a totally different game. So they have to do not turn the ball over, get a quick start. And I think they're going to do that. It's going to be tough without Deshaun, with a hobbled Alshon probably, with a hobbled Dallas Goedert probably. Again, lean on the run game. That can open up the play action. That can open up things in the middle of the field for Ertz, for Nelson. And just play hard, play fast, and play physical. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get down early, the crowd won't get on top of you. They'll be on the Lions. The link is going to be rocking, and the Eagles can come away with the victory.
Yeah, this game, I think, is going to be fought and won or lost in those trenches with the offensive lines, the defensive lines in that run game. I expect, just like last week, which I'm not taking anything away from last week's game. That game was a really good game. That was a good game on both sides. It sucks we lost, but that was a hard-fought game. Every hit was hard hit. I expect the same thing from the Lions this week and from us this week. I expect a really good football game that is going to be won and lost in those trenches.
I definitely agree with you there. So we will have a lot to talk about early next week as the Eagles have the game Sunday, and then 4 days later they are back on the field at the frozen. Well, it's not going to be the frozen tundra, but at the hallowed grounds of Lambeau Field as the Eagles take on Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Connor and I will be back next week with hopefully a victory green hour on Monday-ish. And then we will get you set up for the Eagles and the Green Bay Packers for Thursday. This segment of the Kelly Green Hour was brought to you by Just Food Catering Services. Treat yourself, take it home, visit our friend Asian Rob, and you can give him a call at 215-794-FOOD. That's 215-794-3663. Or visit the website at www.jfcatering.com. Again, you can reach us at the Always Next Year Podcast, Twitter at ANY Podcast. You can reach Connor at Connor10. That's Connor Ten. He's always on Twitter. If you have any fantasy football advice, I go to that man because I need help now because I had Antonio Brown.
I really I feel like it's too early, but our own Steve was talking to me one night about Damian Williams, and he's out this week. He's out this week. He's done not really well. He's underwhelmed the first 2 weeks for where he was drafted. So
and they brought Shady in.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it out there. The elephant in the room. I'll wait a couple more weeks to really call it out, but.
And you can reach me at LJ Harrell 54. I like to talk Eagles football, some WWE talk too, as me and Connor do host the People's Take, which we have in a week and a half, something like that. We got a big episode coming up as SmackDown moves to Fox and we get to Hell in a Cell. But again, rate and review our show or wherever you're listening to us. Let us know how we're doing. Give us any feedback, and we will greatly appreciate it. For Connor, I'm LJ. We'll send it out to the Jackdaws. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year Podcast.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me solid through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.